Ladies and gentlemen, let's read Gaming Cynical video. Let us discuss a recent Ask Me Anything with Ed Fries. Now, he was the man behind the concept and the creation of the original Xbox, and he really helped to bring Microsoft into the console gaming industry, whereas before, of course, there were, well, basically no need for software, and, well, your PC joystick. But anyway, he was asked a multitude of different questions, including whether Sony and Microsoft released their consoles too early. In other words, whether they should have waited and possibly maybe gotten some of the more games available ready for launch, that type of thing. And he said, it's been a long wait with this next generation of consoles, the longest in history, so no, I don't think they shipped too early. I think the problem is that making console games on these super powerful machines has become really time-consuming and expensive. The teams are often in the hundreds, and budgets are tens of hundreds of millions of dollars. Sorry, tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. Given how fickle the audience can be, that's a big bet for any games publisher. Fortunately, the new machines are opening up to, in the past, of small independent developers, and I hope this will be able to fill the void with the less expensive and more original content. End quote. So what of course he's referring to then is indie game developers, which are becoming synonymous now with games development. Now they certainly aren't enough to sell a game system. No one's going to buy a PlayStation 4 and Xbox One based on a small indie studio. However, they do help to solidify time between releases, and they can certainly help. I mean, Sony, for example, are having quite a lot of success with the PlayStation Plus initiative, in that obviously they give you a free game or two per month or whatever, and often they are indie games, and more to the point, they're very successful and very well known and popular games. Now, once again, you know, you're not going to buy a PlayStation 4 for something like Outlast. But on the other hand, it's a great bonus for the machine, so it certainly is doing the system quite well. But a fairly interesting comment popped up, and it was basically stated, when I buy a console, I want to play the games on it now. Now I seem to be barraged with sports, movies, music, videos, and a ton of other things, which is very annoying and get in the way of what I want to do. Was this discussed when the original Xbox was on the drawing board? And Ed replied, it was something we tried to keep it all about the games. Most of the senior Xbox people at the time were gamers, and we knew that that was important to people like us. End quote. I find this rather interesting, if only because it's a complete turnaround now. Of course, Microsoft policies and philosophies based on this, and it's certainly the area that Microsoft have received most criticism in. Basically, the theories of the Xbox One, I mean, there are multiple, but one of the primary things, of course, regarding the pricing of the system is that the Kinect is one of the things that's pushing up the price. And, of course, a lot of people feel that the DDR3 memory and other component choices are definitely a result of trying to keep the system lower, but a more multimedia-focused system. Personally speaking, and this is just my opinion, this is certainly not a sample of the market, this is not me doing any research, but just my personal opinion. I use my PC for gaming, but I also use it for other stuff. I'll use it for like Netflix or whatever I need to do. I'll just output it to my big TV, done. For consoles, I really just don't care about any content. I don't watch the movies from it because I find them expensive oftentimes. You know, you can rent them cheap at other locations. I don't really use any of the multimedia applications. Personally speaking, I don't use the integration with like any of the social media because, once again, I've got it on my phone and other methods, so I can somewhat see what Ed's saying. Obviously, I'm not the entire market share, but I definitely think there are people who agree with me on that. Okay, so here's one. What about virtual reality? So someone asked, after seeing Sony drop Project Morpheus, so do you think Microsoft Research will compete, and how successful will they be? And he replied, I'm not really sure what Microsoft are up to these days. I hear rumours about all this kind of cool stuff, but will it make it to the market? After watch 3D TV fail so spectacularly the last few years, I'm a bit skeptical about VR. At least for the broad consumer market, but for hardcore gamers, who knows? Maybe it will work and bring some amazing new experiences, end quote. This is quite interesting because obviously we've heard this massive bombshell regarding Facebook buying out Oculus Rift for about $2 billion US. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit of a secret. I feel that virtual reality could have some really cool options and uses for gaming. I do. I'm not someone who thinks virtual reality is awful, but I remember growing up and looking at like these like tech shows when I was younger. In the UK we had like Games Master, for example, and on a different channel we had like something else called Bad Influence, and there were tons of other little, TV shows and stuff, and you would sometimes see like virtual reality demonstrations, and then you could see the basics of what virtual reality would look like through kind of in a two-dimensional way. You can see like these really basic 3D worlds, and people were saying that when they were trying them out, this it's very cool. It's almost like you're there, and great. But I personally really like just looking at the screen. Like, I find myself immersed in that, and I don't necessarily know if 3D is going to be a thing yet. I mean, maybe in the distant future when we're using like holographic displays and that type of thing, then I think it could be very different. But right now I'm not necessarily sure, based on a lot of information, even from John Carmack, who's stated that we're getting quite a few issues regarding the resolution of the displays that are that small, as well as the actual GPU power to drive them. So in other words, significant, or should I say sufficient, frame rates at high enough resolution. Now obviously John Carmack is working on this, and ironically enough, John is now technically working with Facebook, or for Facebook, or however you want to say it, but I'm sure that the technology will improve, but I'm not necessarily certain it's going to revolutionize things right now. And I'm not really sure about 3D TV. I mean, I kind of remember it going absolutely crazy, but now of course it's somewhat dying off a little bit. Hey, the good news is it did bring down the price of standard televisions though, right? Finally, I'm going to read you guys out a rather interesting one, which how did he pitch the idea for the Xbox to Microsoft initially? He said, well, I used to work on Excel, so I liked that we were a spreadsheet company, but I did games before I joined Microsoft, so after I worked on Excel and Word. I ran Microsoft's PC game business for almost 5 years before we started the Xbox, and grew the business a lot during that time. There were probably some people in upper management at the company that were a little nervous about what I was doing, but I always felt like I had strong support from Bill, obviously referring to Bill Gates. One easy way to justify entertainment within Microsoft was to talk about how people spent their time. They spend 8 hours a day at work, hopefully using Microsoft software some of the time, and they spend 8 hours a day sleep. That's a tough software market to obviously break into. That leaves 8 more hours where they could be using our stuff. At least some of that last 8 hours could hopefully be leisure time, relaxing and having fun. Shouldn't Microsoft software be part in making that time better too? Interesting, end quote, by the way. Interesting philosophy, isn't it? And it's actually kind of an indicator of how the Xbox did it. The Xbox did meet quite a lot of resistance from what the rumours are when the original Xbox was launched, and indeed Microsoft kind of used it as like a gauge and then vastly improved it with the Xbox 360. Personally, I really liked the original Xbox. I might be in the minority there. I didn't even, as I've mentioned before, I didn't even play it on Xbox Live, not because I didn't have the internet, but just because I was using my console at the time. My console for like the single player stuff, and multiplayer stuff was just all being taken care of with like Counter-Strike and other titles at the time. And I actually really liked the Xbox, I'm just going to be honest. But there you have it. So, a little bit of an insight for you guys. If I remember, I'll post you guys the link. If not, you can just Google it yourself. It was on Yabbly. That's Yabbly, just in case you've not heard of it. And I'm going to leave you guys to it. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.